The Berlin Hauptbahnhof was a cathedral of steel and glass, bustling with the orderly chaos of European travel. I adjusted the strap of my camera bag on my shoulder, the familiar weight a comfort. After 2 weeks shooting the stark beauty of Norwegian fjords, the urban hum felt almost loud. My eyes scanned the crowd, and then I saw her, Evelyn. A decade evaporated in a heartbeat. There she was, waving from near a newsstand, a smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was flanked by 4 children arranged neatly by height, like a set of perfectly matched stairs. My breath caught. The photos she'd sent over the years hadn't prepared me for the reality of them altogether, or for the change in her. "Jet, over here," she called, her voice still holding that melodic warmth I remembered. I weaved through the crowd and pulled her into a fierce hug. She felt smaller, bird-boned beneath her expensive-looking cashmere wrap. "Evie," I breathed, the old nickname slipping out. "God, look at you." She laughed, a light, practiced sound. "Look at you, world-famous adventure photographer, just dropping by." She stepped back, her hands moving automatically to smooth the hair of the child closest to her, the girl of about 8 with Evelyn's same honey blonde waves. "Kids, this is Auntie Jet, my very best friend from home." The children, in unison, offered variations of hello. "Auntie Jet." Their pronunciation was perfect. American accented English. No shy hiding behind legs. No fidgeting. They just stood, attentive, their eyes politely on me. "This is Noah," Evelyn said, placing a hand on the shoulder of the tallest, a boy who looked about 12. He had a serious face and gave a firm, small nod. Mia, the 8-year-old girl, offered a tiny, precise curtsy that made my heart hurt a little. Leo, a boy of maybe 5, stared with unabashed curiosity but remained silent. And Finn, the toddler, around 3, was holding Mia's hand, sucking solemnly on a pacifier. "It's so great to finally meet you all," I said, crouching down to their level. I aimed my charm at Leo. "I've heard you're a Lego master." Leo's eyes widened, but he glanced quickly at his mother before answering. "Yes, I build the sets from the instructions first. Then I am allowed to free build." "Allowed to?" I repeated, straightening up and catching Evelyn's eye. She waved a dismissive hand, her smile tightening. "Daniel believes in structure. It's good for them. Clear rules, clear rewards." She clapped her hands softly. "Okay, team, luggage cart protocol. Noah, you're on point." With quiet efficiency, the 2 older children took charge of my single, battered rolling case and my heavy gear duffel, loading them onto a cart. Noah pushed, Mia guided. It was impressive and unsettling. "They're incredible, Evie," I said as we followed them toward the parking garage. "They're good kids," she said, but her eyes were on her phone, thumb swiping to check the screen. A tiny frown appeared between her brows. "Daniel's still at the office. A last-minute call. He's so sorry to miss your arrival. He said to go ahead. Get settled. No problem. The life of a big shot consultant, right?" "Exactly," she said, but the words sounded hollow. She slipped the phone into her purse, then immediately took it out again to check the time. "We should get moving. The traffic on the Stadtautobahn will be picking up." Their home was a stunning, renovated loft in a sleek building in Kreuzberg, all exposed brick, steel beams, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a postcard view of the city. It was minimalist, sterile, and looked like a magazine spread for modern German living. Not a toy out of place, not a speck of dust. "Welcome to our chaos," Evelyn said with a laugh that rang slightly false. She was already toeing off her shoes and aligning them neatly on a rack by the door. The children did the same, placing their little shoes in a perfect row below hers. I left my boots haphazardly on the mat. "This place is amazing, Evie. Daniel designed most of it. He has an eye for order." She gave me a quick tour. In the open-plan living area, above a sleek electric fireplace, wasn't a piece of art, but a large, elegantly framed set of handwritten rules titled Family Protocols. I drifted closer to read. Protocol 1. Respect the schedule. Meals, study, leisure, and rest occur at appointed times. Protocol 4. Emotional regulation is a personal responsibility. Excessive negative effect impacts the household harmony. Protocol 7. Uniformity in public. Present a united, composed front. There were 12. Cute, I said, keeping my tone light, a bit more formal than the don't eat the paste rule we had growing up. Evelyn came to stand beside me, crossing her arms. It works for us. The children thrive on predictability. We all do, but her gaze on the frame was distant, as if reading a verdict. The afternoon was a blur of unpacking and trying to connect with the kids. Mia showed me her room, which was pristine, her dolls arranged by size and hair color. Noah was in the shared boys' room, reading a textbook on basic physics. Dad says understanding the laws of the universe is the foundation of rational thought. He explained when I asked about it. I helped Evelyn prepare dinner, to elaborate. From scratch schnitzel that she insisted was Daniel's favorite. As she pounded the veal thin, her movements were swift, efficient, tinged with anxiety. He prefers it exactly 4 millimeters thick. She murmured, more to herself than to me, checking with a metal ruler. Seriously, Evie, it's fried meat. She didn't smile. Details matter. Jet, it shows care. The atmosphere shifted palpably at 7:28 p.m. Evelyn's head snapped up from checking the roast potatoes. 2 minutes, she said, almost to herself. She wiped her hands on a towel, smoothed her hair, and adjusted the neckline of her dress to a pretty, feminine wrap dress. Kids, 5-minute warning for Dad's arrival. Tidy check. The children, who had been playing a quiet board game, instantly moved. The game was put away. Cushions plumped. A stray crayon captured and vanished. They assembled near the door, standing with their hands at their sides. Evelyn took her place, slightly in front of them, her spine straight, a hostess smile fixed on her face. I leaned against the kitchen island, feeling like an anthropologist observing a strange ritual. At 7:32 precisely, the key turned in the lock. Daniel Bauer entered. He was tall, handsome in a severe, Germanic way. Sharp cheekbones, ice blue eyes, hair trimmed with military precision. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my best camera lens. Daddy's home, the children chimed, their voices a rehearsed chorus. Hello, my team, he said, his voice a calm, deep baritone. He placed his briefcase by the door with precise alignment. His eyes swept over the children, then Evelyn, a brief, approving nod. Then they landed on me. Evelyn seemed to vibrate with tension. Daniel, this is Jet. Jet, my husband. Daniel. I stepped forward, extending a hand. Great to finally meet you. Daniel, thanks for having me. His handshake was firm, cool, and brief. Jet, Evelyn has spoken of you often. The adventurer. His smile didn't reach his eyes either. It was an assessment, not a welcome. I hope your travels were uneventful. Uneventful is boring in my line of work. They were great. He turned to Evelyn. The apartment smells acceptable. It sounded like a concession, not a compliment. He shrugged off his suit jacket, and Evelyn was there, in a movement so fluid it must have been practiced 10,000 times. To catch it and hang it in the hall closet. She knelt to place his leather loafers on the rack while he slid into house slippers that had appeared beside him. Dinner is ready when you are, she said, rising. Good. I have a conference call with Singapore at 9. Let's eat. Dinner was a quiet, formal affair. The children ate with perfect manners, speaking only when spoken to. Daniel held court. And how is the stock photography business? Jet? He asked, cutting his schnitzel with exacting strokes. It's adventure photography, actually, and it's fine. I'm more into editorial and book projects these days, a precarious field, but I suppose it suits a certain nomadic temperament. He took a sip of mineral water. Evelyn, the asparagus is undersalted. I've mentioned this before. Evelyn's fork hesitated. I'm sorry, Daniel. I must have mismeasured. Precision. Lipin. It's the foundation of excellence in all things. He turned back to me. Evelyn was quite the free spirit when I met her. All passion, no discipline. It's been my project to bring order to that chaos. You can see the results. He gestured with his fork to the children, to the impeccable apartment. My knuckles whitened around my knife. Evie was never chaotic. She was creative, and one of the smartest people I knew. Evelyn was staring at her plate, a faint pink on her cheeks. Daniel chuckled. A dry sound. Sentimentality. A common flaw. Intelligence without structure is just potential energy. Wasted. He looked at Evelyn. Isn't that right? Dear, remember your business? The jewelry? Evelyn's head dipped lower. It wasn't viable. I was naive, but you learned. You embraced a more vital role. Wife, mother, the architects of civilization. He said it as if quoting a motto. Later, after the children were in bed, a process that involved them each reciting a list of tomorrow's goals to Daniel. I tried to help Evelyn clean up. She was scrubbing an already clean pot. Hey, I said softly. You okay? That was a bit intense at dinner. She forced a bright smile. Daniel is just direct. He has high standards. It's how he's built his career. It's how he's helped me. She put the pot away. He's right. You know, before him, I was all over the place. He gave me focus, a blueprint. Evie, you were a straight A student who got a full ride to Brown. You had focus. She shook her head, avoiding my eyes. Book smarts aren't life smarts. Jet, I needed his guidance. I still do. She checked the clock. I should go say goodnight to the kids. Make sure their uniforms are laid out for tomorrow. Make yourself at home. I did not feel at home. I felt like I was in a very beautiful, very quiet museum. I retreated to the guest room, a cell-like space as minimalist as the rest. I was scrolling through my photos, trying to ground myself in the wild, untamed landscapes of Norway, when I heard it, through the wall, from the master bedroom, came the low rumble of Daniel's voice. I couldn't make out words, only the steady, relentless cadence of it. Then, a higher, pleading tone, Evelyn. A pause. His voice again, sharper now. A thud, like a hand on a surface. Then, unmistakably, the sound of weeping, muffled as if into a pillow. I sat frozen on the bed. The glow of my laptop screen, the only light. The perfect, silent loft felt like a pressure cooker. Out in the dark living room, the framed family protocol on the wall seemed to gleam in the city's distant light. Protocol 4. Emotional regulation is a personal responsibility. I thought of the vibrant, laughing girl I'd grown up with. The one who'd dared me to jump off the highest rock at the quarry. Who'd painted murals on her bedroom wall. Who'd argued philosophy with fierce, bright eyes. That girl was in there, weeping into a pillow, and the man who had told her, in front of her oldest friend and her children, that her passion was chaos, her intelligence wasted, was the cause. My hands curled into fists. This wasn't a happy reunion. This was a reconnaissance mission, and what I discovered in the first few hours had turned my blood cold. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of hushed, efficient movement, dressing in my standard uniform of dark jeans and a simple t-shirt. I wandered into the main living area. Evelyn was at the stove, flipping pancakes with one hand while her other scrolled on a tablet propped next to the burner. The children were at the dining table, eating in silence. A printed schedule was taped to the fridge, every half-hour block accounted for in a neat, severe font. Morning, I said, my voice too loud in the quiet room. The children looked up, murmured good morning, Auntie Jet in near unison, then returned to their food. Evelyn jumped, a flicker of panic crossing her face before she smoothed it into a smile. Jet, you're up. I was about to wake you. Coffee's fresh. Breakfast is almost done. Daniel left for an early meeting. I poured myself a mug, watching her. She moved like a hummingbird, all frantic energy, contained within a small space. You don't have to go to all this trouble, Evie. I'm happy with just coffee. Nonsense. A proper breakfast is the foundation of a productive day. The phrase sounded recited. She slid a perfect stack of pancakes onto a plate and set it at an empty spot at the table. Sit, please. I sat. The pancakes were flawless. So was the fruit salad. The silence, however, was stifling. I turned to Noah, who was meticulously cutting his food. So, Noah, what's on the docket for today? He looked at his mother, then back at me. Academic modules from 9 to 12. Piano practice at 12:30. German grammar drills at 2. Then outdoor physical conditioning in the park at 3:45. Wow, that's a full day. Any time for, fun? Fun is undisciplined, Mia said quietly, not looking up from her plate. Physical conditioning in the park is fun. We are permitted to use the playground apparatus for 15 minutes if our form is satisfactory. A cold, not tightened in my stomach. I caught Evelyn's eye. She was staring at her tablet, her jaw tight. They have a very enriching schedule, she said, her tone defensive. Daniel consults with a childhood development specialist. It's about maximizing potential. After breakfast, the children dispersed to their rooms. Evelyn began wiping down counters that were already clean. I saw my opening. Hey, I'm heading out to shoot some of the street art around the East Side Gallery. Want to be my tour guide? Get out of the house for a bit? I made it sound casual, an afterthought. Her face lit up for a split second, the old Evie, eager for an adventure, then dimmed. Oh, I'd love to, but the children's schedule, and I have household procurement and menu planning this afternoon. Come on, it's a few hours. They're old enough to be fine. You said yourself Noah is practically a little adult. It'll be like old times. I leaned against the counter, adopting my most persuasive, easygoing grin. For me, I haven't seen you in 10 years. I want you, not the tour bus version. She bit her lip, her eyes darting to the schedule on the fridge, then to her phone. Let me just check with Daniel, see if it's a good day. She grabbed her phone and hurried toward the bedroom, her voice dropping to a low, urgent murmur. She came back 5 minutes later, looking pale but resolute. He says it's acceptable, as long as I'm back by 3 to oversee the children's outdoor time. She tried to smile. Let me just get my bag. The train ride was the most relaxed I'd seen her. She pointed out landmarks, her voice gradually losing its tight, rehearsed quality, but her hand kept dipping into her purse to touch her phone, checking the time, checking for messages. The sunlight outside seemed to confuse her, as if she were a creature emerging from a cave. We found a small cafe with outdoor seating overlooking the spree. I ordered us 2 coffees. For a few minutes, we just people-watched. Then I leaned forward. So, household procurement and menu planning? That sounds official. She stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking a nervous rhythm. It's just shopping and deciding what to cook. Daniel just prefers we use the correct terminology. It clarifies purpose, right? Like outdoor physical conditioning for going to the park. I kept my tone light, teasing. What's the correct terminology for having a coffee with an old friend? She didn't smile. Social maintenance and bonding. It's on the weekly schedule, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 to 11 a.m. If the household efficiency rating is above 90%. I stared at her. You're joking. She finally met my eyes, hers wide and painfully earnest. No, it's part of the system. The family harmonization system. Daniel developed it. It covers everything. It's why everything runs so smoothly. A slow, cold dread began to seep into me. Evie, what system? She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself to explain a complex concept. It's a framework for optimal family functioning. There's the family protocols you saw. Then, for me, there's the personal refinement plan. She said it with a capital P, a proper noun. It outlines my daily wellness, intellectual, domestic, and spousal support objectives. My performance is reviewed. Reviewed? By Daniel? Of course. He's the architect. He needs to assess efficacy and recalibrate. She was using his words. I realized, speaking in a foreign language she'd been forced to learn. Can I see it? I asked gently. Her hand flew to her phone, clutching it like a talisman. It's private, between husband and wife. Evie, look at me. You're my best friend. You seem stressed. I'm worried about you. Tears welled up in her eyes, shocking in their suddenness. I'm not stressed. I'm grateful. Do you have any idea what I was like before? A mess. Impulsive. Emotional. I couldn't stick to anything. Daniel saw the potential in the mess. He took on the project of me. The words tumbled out. A well-rehearsed creed. He gave me structure, purpose, a beautiful home, beautiful children. He provides everything. I just have to follow the plan. It's not a lot to ask. It sounds like a lot to ask, I said quietly. It sounds like you're living in a personal improvement boot camp. That's not fair, she snapped. And for a second, fire flashed in her eyes, the ghost of the girl I knew. Then it guttered out, replaced by fear. She glanced around, as if he might be there, listening. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't understand. He's under so much pressure. His work is incredibly demanding. The least I can do is manage my part perfectly. And I don't. I keep failing. The asparagus last night. I was 2 minutes late returning a library book last week. I forgot to log my hydration on the wellness app yesterday. Her breath hitched. He's not angry. He's just disappointed. And that's so much worse, because it means I'm not learning. I'm not growing. My heart was breaking. Failing? Evie, you're a human being, not a software update. And since when is salted to taste of failure? Since precision is the foundation of excellence. She shot back, parroting his dinner table lecture. Then she crumpled, her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is inappropriate. Emotional regulation is a personal responsibility. She was quoting Protocol 4, beating herself with it. I reached across the table and pried one hand away, holding it. Her skin was cold. Stop. Just stop. Look at me. You are Evelyn Bauer. You gota 1580 on your sats. You convinced the dean to let you create your own interdisciplinary major. You once talked a cop out of giving us a ticket for public drinking by reciting Walt Whitman. For God's sake, you are not a project. You're not a system. You're a person, a smart, creative, amazing person who seems scared of her own shadow right now. She was crying in earnest now, silent tears cutting through her makeup. That girl, she was an idiot. Arrogant, messy idiot who thought she knew everything. Daniel knows everything. He sees the world so clearly. He's right about me. Without him, I'd be nothing. I am nothing without his guidance. I'm a terrible mother. I'm too soft. I confuse the children. I'm a mediocre housekeeper. My conversation is trivial. He deserves so much better, and I'm just failing upward. The self-loathing in her voice was a tangible thing. I held her hand tighter. That is bullshit, Evelyn. And deep down, you know it. That's why you're crying. She yanked her hand back, wiping her face roughly. I'm crying because I'm weak. Because you're here, and you're seeing my failure, and it's humiliating. I have everything. A successful husband, healthy children, a beautiful life. I should be the happiest woman in Berlin. Everyone tells me I am. His colleagues, the other mothers at the Kinderhaus, they all say how lucky I am, how perfect our family is. She looked at me, her eyes desperate. So why do I feel like I'm dying inside? Why does it feel like I'm in a cage? The word hung in the air between us. Cage! Her phone buzzed on the table. She flinched as if shocked, snatching it up. The color drained from her face. It's 2:15. I'm late. I need to be back. I need to go. She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly. Evie, wait. I can't. He'll know. The location sharing. He'll see I'm not on the most efficient route home. I have to go. She was already shoving her things into her bag, a wild panic in her eyes. The moment of raw confession was gone, sealed over by pure, operational fear. I threw some euros on the table and followed her. The relaxed woman from the train was gone. The entire walk back to the station, she was a knot of anxiety, walking too fast, muttering about connections and timing. Back at the loft, the transformation was complete. She became a flurry of efficient motion, checking the children's work, preparing their snacks, her face a placid mask. Daniel returned at 6 p.m. He didn't ask about her day. He asked Noah to recite his completed academic objectives. He asked Mia to play her assigned piano piece. He inspected Leo's handwriting drills. He noted Finn's clean play clothes. At dinner, he turned to Evelyn. And your social bonding window, was it satisfactory? Evelyn kept her eyes on her plate. Yes. Daniel, very good. Productive use of time is the marker of a worthwhile life. He took a sip of wine. Jet, I trust Evelyn didn't bore you with trivialities. She has a tendency toward emotional recall, which is a form of dwelling in the unproductive past. I put my fork down. Not at all. I loved hearing her perspective. She's always had a great memory and a great heart. He gave a thin smile. The heart is an inefficient organ. It's the mind that builds civilizations, and discipline that builds character. His gaze settled on Evelyn, who had gone very still. Isn't that right, Liebchen? We've worked so hard to strengthen your mind, to discipline your character, to make you resilient. Evelyn's head bobbed in a quick, shaky nod. Yes. Daniel, thank you. Later, as I lay in the dark guest room, I replayed the day, the panic in the cafe, the whispered self-hatred, the cage. I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into an old, unused social media account, one from college. I found Evelyn's old profile, frozen in time. Pictures of her with paint in her hair, at a protest rally, laughing with her head thrown back, making a silly face at the camera. Captions full of exclamation points and bad poetry and fierce opinions. I looked at the woman in the next room, living by a schedule, graded on her hydration, flinching at a text alert. This wasn't a marriage. It was a demolition. And he was still swinging the wrecking ball. Day by day, protocol by protocol, I opened a blank document. At the top, I typed observations, and I began to write down everything I'd seen and heard. The protocols, the schedule, the personal refinement plan, the fear, the quotes. I wasn't just visiting an old friend anymore. I was documenting a crime scene. The victim just didn't know she was dead yet. The next morning, I made my move. Over breakfast, another silent, perfectly executed affair. I addressed Daniel directly. He was reading something on a tablet, sipping black coffee with surgical precision. Daniel, I was thinking. I began, injecting just the right amount of casual, artistic enthusiasm into my voice. My editor is keen on a more human interest angle. You know, contrasting the stark landscapes I usually shoot with the intimate, structured beauty of domestic life. I was wondering if I could do a little photo essay on your family. He looked up slowly, his ice blue eyes assessing. Evelyn froze, a piece of toast halfway to her lips. The children's eyes darted between us. A photo essay, Daniel repeated, his tone flat. Yeah, the architecture of a modern family, or something like that. The focus on order, intention, harmony. It's so different from my usual chaos. I gave a self-deprecating laugh. Evelyn mentioned your family harmonization system. It sounds fascinating. From an anthropological perspective, I could see the calculation behind his eyes. Vanity warred with his instinct for control. The idea of being held up as a paragon of modern efficiency was, I guessed, a potent lure. My system is proprietary, a methodology for optimal human development within the familial unit. He said, setting his tablet down. It's not a spectacle. Of course not. It would be tasteful, respectful, more about the outcomes, the peace, the focus. I gestured to the quiet, clean room, the well-behaved children. Most families are a zoo by 8 a.m. This is remarkable. A faint, proud smile touched his lips. It is the result of disciplined application. Very well. You may observe and document. Under certain conditions. No disruption to the schedule. No directing us. You are a fly on the wall. And I retain final approval over any images used. Naturally, I said, nodding. Completely observational. Thank you. Evelyn's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. I gave her a small, reassuring smile that felt utterly hollow. Thus, I was granted a backstage pass to the machine. I kept my camera in hand, but my real tool was the Notes app on my phone, hidden in my pocket. I tapped observations with my thumb. Blind. Observation 1. The morning audit. At 7:45 a.m., the children assembled in the living room, standing in a line. Daniel, still in his robe, walked down the line with a clipboard. Noah, bed made to protocol? Yes. Sir, corners hospital tight. Personal hygiene? Teeth 3 minutes. Flossed. Cold rinse, as specified. Daniel made a mark on the clipboard. He moved to Mia. Yesterday's piano practice. You hesitated in the third measure of the Clementi. Cause? Mia's little shoulders tensed. Lack of focused repetition on the transition. Sir. Solution. 5 additional focused repetitions of the measure transition today. Before noon. Good. Self-diagnosis is the first step to correction. A mark on the clipboard. It went on like this. A clinical debrief. Leo was chided for a suboptimal sock fold. Finn, mercifully, was just checked for cleanliness. Each child received a score. At the end, Daniel announced, collective score, 92%, a 3-point drop from yesterday. The cause is clear. Remedial action will be discussed at evening review. The children's faces fell in unison. They were a team, and one had dragged down the average. The blame was communal, the shame palpable. Observation 2. The chore wheel and point system. On the refrigerator, next to the schedule, was a complex chart. Chores were listed with point values. Dishwashing dinner, 5 points. Vacuuming common areas, 10 points. Grocery inventory audit, 15 points. The children's names were listed with weekly point totals. At the bottom, a list of privileges with point costs. Extra 30 minutes screen time, 50 points. Choice of weekend dessert, 75 points. Excused from one minor chore, 100 points. I watched Noah vacuum the living room with intense focus. Mia, after finishing her piano remedial repetitions, audited the pantry, checking expiration dates on a clipboard. I knelt beside her. That's a big job for an 8-year-old. She didn't look up. Accuracy is important. If I miss an expired item, it's a 10-point deduction for the week. What happens if you don't get enough points? She finally glanced at me, her eyes old. Then you don't get privileges, and you get an unsatisfactory rating on your weekly review. She said the way someone might say, you get a tooth pulled. Observation 3. Evelyn's role. Evelyn was the system's chief operating officer and its primary subject. Her personal refinement plan clipboard was always nearby. I saw her, during the children's academic modules, sitting at the kitchen island, reviewing her own objectives. I caught a glimpse of the categories: domestic efficiency, spousal support quality, parental composure, intellectual growth. There were checkboxes and spaces for notes. Later, she was preparing lunch. Daniel entered, opened the fridge, and frowned. The arugula is wilted at the edges. Evelyn, it should have been utilized yesterday or composted. Wastage indicates poor planning. Evelyn's shoulders hunched. I'm sorry. I misjudged the rate of consumption. See that you adjust your projections. Log the error in the nutritional planning section. We'll discuss the root cause later. Yes, Daniel. After he left, I went to the fridge. The arugula was in a sealed container. A single leaf at the very edge had a barely perceptible hint of wilt. I would have thrown it in the salad without a second thought. Observation 4. The breaking point. It happened after lunch. Leo, perhaps energized by my presence or just being 5, was a little fidgety. He knocked over his glass of milk. It shattered on the tile floor, a white river spreading everywhere. Time stopped. Leo's face went sheet white. Mia gasped. Noah closed his eyes. Finn started to cry. Before a single sob could fully escape Leo, Evelyn was there. She didn't go to Leo. She snatched him up by the arm. Her grip brutal. Look what you did, she hissed, her voice trembling with a rage that was pure, undiluted terror. Careless, messy, undisciplined. She was yelling at him, but her eyes were darting towards the hallway. Daniel's home office. She was terrified of his reaction, and that terror was being vomited onto her 5-year-old son. Clean it up. Now. Every drop. Before your father sees. She shoved paper towels into his small hands. Leo was crying silently, shaking as he tried to sop up the milk, his tiny fingers dodging shards of glass. I couldn't stand it. I moved forward. Evie, it's okay. It was an accident. Let me help him. No, she barked, whirling on me. Her face was a mask of panic. He needs to learn. He needs to be accountable. She turned back to Leo, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Do you want to fail the weekly review? Do you want to let everyone down? I stood rooted, my heart a cold stone in my chest. This was the system's true output. A mother so broken by fear of the overseer that she became his enforcer, terrorizing her own child to preempt his displeasure. Daniel's office door remained shut. The crisis was contained. Evelyn, breathing heavily, helped Leo finish cleaning. Her hands gentler now, shaking. She didn't hug him. She just said, go to your room. Practice stillness for 30 minutes. Reflect on precision. Leo scurried away, head down. Later, I found Noah in the small, austere backyard, kicking a soccer ball against the wall with methodical thumps. I sat on the steps nearby. Rough day, I said. Thump, thump. It was suboptimal, he said, echoing his father's language. Leo didn't mean to spill the milk. Thump. Intent is secondary. Outcome is primary. Disorder is a contagion. It has to be contained immediately. The words were robotic. A downloaded file. Who told you that? Your dad? Thump. He caught the ball and turned to me. At 12, he had the eyes of a weary soldier. It's in the protocols. Disorder causes anxiety. Anxiety reduces performance. We have to protect the system. He paused, looking back at the house. We have to protect Mom. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? He scuffed his shoe on the pavement. She gets the worst of it. When we mess up, it's like it reflects on her management. So if we're perfect, she's safe. Safer. He looked at me, and for a fleeting second, the pretense of a mature little man fell away, revealing a scared boy. You won't make it worse, will you, Auntie Jet? By taking pictures? He likes things to look perfect. The weight of his misplaced trust was crushing. I'm trying to understand. Noah, that's all. He nodded, unconvinced, and resumed kicking the ball. Thump, 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 the sound of a heartbeat in a prison cell. That night, after another silent, tense dinner, Daniel summoned me to his study. It was a room of cold order, a monolithic desk, books arranged by height and color, no personal photos. Your observations proceed satisfactorily? He asked, steepling his fingers. It's a remarkable system, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The level of cooperation, the clarity of expectations. Chaos is the default state of mankind. Jet, left unchecked. It leads to entropy, to misery. My system imposes order. It removes the guesswork, the emotional negotiation. It provides clear metrics for success and failure. He spoke like a man giving a TED Talk. Evelyn, for instance, when I met her, she was a creature of pure, unguided potential, brilliant, but scattered, prone to fits of emotion. Her relationships were dysregulated, her ambitions unfocused. She seemed pretty focused to me. She got into Brown, a testament to raw intellect, not discipline. She would have floundered. I provided the structure. I showed her that feelings are data, not directives, that a messy home is a metaphor for a messy mind. It was a re-education. He said it with profound self-satisfaction. It took years, consistent reinforcement, correcting narratives. You see the result, a capable homemaker, a compliant wife, a mother who instills discipline. She is, in many ways, my greatest creation. The word creation hung in the air, vile and absolute. He didn't see a wife. He saw a finished sculpture, one he had chiseled out of a flawed block of marble. And the children? I asked, my throat tight. They're being inoculated against the weakness of their generation. They will understand cause and effect, merit and consequence. They will not be slaves to their whims. He leaned forward slightly. You see, Jet, most people fear control. They call it oppression. But true freedom, the only freedom that matters, is the freedom from your own inferior impulses. I have given that to my family. I left his study feeling nauseous. It wasn't the raving of a tyrant. It was the calm, logical thesis of a fanatic. He'd built a panopticon, and he was the all-seeing, all-judging eye in the center. And he'd convinced them, especially Evelyn, that the walls were for their own protection. Back in my room, I added to my notes, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Point system, collective punishment, Evelyn's terror as enforcement mechanism, children protecting the mother by being perfect. Daniel sees them as creations, projects, re-education. I opened the photos folder on my laptop. Among the shots of the children doing chores, of the chore wheel, of the schedule, I had one I'd taken quickly, secretly. It was Evelyn, after the milk incident, sitting alone at the kitchen island after everyone had dispersed. She wasn't crying. She was just staring into space, her clipboard with its personal refinement plainly untouched in front of her. The look on her face was one of utter, hollowed-out defeat. It was the face of someone who had just attacked her child to appease her master, and knew it. I looked at the photo, then at my notes. This wasn't just a sad family. This was a cult of one, a systemic, psychological annihilation. And I was the only witness on the outside. My flight to Munich to see Marcus couldn't come soon enough. I needed more than observations. I needed a way out. The excuse was thin, but it was the best I could cobble together on short notice. Over another silent breakfast, I announced I needed to make a quick trip to Munich. Munich? Daniel didn't look up from his Financial Times. Tourist fatigue from Berlin already? Not at all, I said, layering on the professional frustration. It's work, a last-minute thing. There's a Swiss foundation that funds artistic projects with an alpine focus. They're having a mixer in Munich tomorrow night. My agent says it's a golden opportunity, but I need to network. Shake some hands. You know how it is. Evelyn looked up from carefully slicing Finn's sausage into identical, coin-sized pieces. You're leaving? Her voice held a note of panic she quickly tried to mask. Just for a day or two. Promise. I'll be back before you know it. Need to get some shots of the Alps anyway for the portfolio. I gave her a reassuring smile, hoping she'd read the subtext. I'm not abandoning you. Daniel's gaze lifted, cool and assessing. Philanthropic networking. An inefficient model, but I suppose it's how your industry functions. Very well. The train is the most logical option. I can have my assistant book you a ticket. Already done, I said, perhaps a little too quickly. The last thing I needed was his assistant having my travel details. First class. Leaving this afternoon. Just need to grab my go bag. I traveled light for a reason. My go bag was always half-packed. Evelyn walked me to the door later, the children already immersed in their morning routines. She looked lost. I'll miss you, she said, the words small and sincere. I'll be back in 48 hours. Tops, I said, pulling her into a hug. I whispered into her hair. Stay strong. Keep observing. Write things down. In your head, if you have to. I'm working on something. I felt her give the tiniest nod before she pulled away. Her hostess smiled back in place. Have a productive trip. Jet. The high-speed train south was a blur of green countryside, but my mind was racing faster. I reviewed the photos and notes on my encrypted laptop, the cold facts forming a damning pattern. Coercive control, the term Marcus had used once, years ago, over drinks when he was venting about a difficult case. I'd looked it up afterward. A systematic pattern of domination using isolation, manipulation, intimidation, and regulation of everyday life. It wasn't just emotional abuse. It was a siege on a person's autonomy. Daniel had written the fucking playbook. Marcus Weber was waiting for me at the Munich Hauptbahnhof. 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested he spent more time in a climbing gym than a courtroom. Dark hair peppered with distinguished gray at the temples. He broke into a grin when he saw me, a warm, easy expression that felt like a physical relief after days in Daniel's Arctic presence. Jet Cooper, looking as illegally adventurous as ever. He pulled me into a brief, firm hug. He smelled like cedar and coffee. Marcus, thanks for seeing me on such short notice. I know you're busy. For you? Always. Even if the art sponsorship law query sounded like the flimsiest pretext in legal history. He took my duffel, his lawyer's eyes missing nothing. You look tired, and not the good, just Summit de Mountain tired. The haunted kind. Come on, I know a place. The cafe was tucked away from the tourist bustle. All dark wood and the rich smell of real coffee. We took a corner booth. Once our drinks arrived, a double espresso for me. Black coffee for him. He leaned forward. All professional concern. Okay, Jet, what's really going on? The art sponsorship cover wouldn't fool a first-year law student. I took a deep breath. It's my friend, Evelyn, the one who married the German consultant and moved here, the one with the perfect life on Instagram. He nodded, remembering. The perfect life is a prison. I opened my laptop, turned it to face him, and slid it across the table. I've been staying with them for 5 days. This is what I've seen. Read it. Look at the pictures. Tell me I'm crazy. For 10 minutes. The only sounds were the clink of cups and the soft tap of Marcus scrolling. His expression shifted from curiosity to concern, then to a grim, hard-edged focus. His jaw tightened when he saw the photo of Evelyn. Hollow-eyed after the milk incident, he read my notes on the protocols, the point system, Daniel's re-education speech. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. You're not crazy, he said, his voice low and steady. This is textbook coercive control. It's psychological torture dressed up as domestic management. The confirmation, from a professional, was both a relief and a new kind of terror. What can she do? Legally? Marcus sat back, steepling his fingers, his mind already shifting into legal analysis mode. It's complicated. Germany has made strides recently, recognizing psychisch Gewalt, psychological violence, that I end family law, especially since the Istanbul Convention ratification. What you've documented here, that the isolation, the financial control via strict allowances, the constant surveillance and criticism, the rules governing her basic autonomy, IT could form the basis for a restraining order, certainly be a major factor in a custody and divorce proceeding. Could. I pressed, but he sighed. It's notoriously difficult to prove. It's her word against his, and he's a wealthy, respected professional. He'll have expensive lawyers who'll paint her as hysterical, ungrateful, an unfit mother struggling with the demands of a high-achieving household. Your documentation helps. A lot, especially the photos of the rules. The notes quoting him directly. But it's a steep, ugly climb. She's breaking. Marcus. I saw her scream at her 5-year-old for spilling milk because she was so terrified of her husband's reaction. The kids are terrified. The oldest one told me they have to be perfect to protect mom. This isn't just a bad marriage. It's a hostage situation. I believe you, he said, reaching out to touch my hand briefly, and will help her. I'll put you in touch with colleagues here in Berlin who specialize in this. Women's shelters, Hilfe telephone. But, Jet, he hesitated, a new wariness in his eyes. There's something else. You said he's a consultant? Yeah, some high-stakes international management consultancy. Why? Marcus glanced around, lowering his voice even though we were speaking English. The name, Daniel Bauer. It rang a bell when you first mentioned it months ago, but I couldn't place it. After you called yesterday, I did some digging, discreetly, through back channels. A chill that had nothing to do with the cafe's air conditioning went through me. What did you find? His firm, Kronos Consulting, is of interest to certain financial regulatory bodies. And not just here. There are whispers, very quiet whispers. What kind of whispers? Money laundering, for clients in the former Soviet bloc. Structuring complex, multi-jurisdiction transactions to move dirty money and make it look clean. Kronos specializes in operational efficiency and regulatory navigation for multinationals. It's a perfect cover. Marcus's voice was deadly serious. My source, and this is a friend at the Bundesanstalt for Finanzdienstleistungsaufsicht, says Bauer isn't just an employee. He's a key architect. He's brilliant, ruthless, and very, very careful. The pieces started crashing together in my mind. The need for absolute control, the obsession with order and hiding imperfection, the cold, logical detachment. It wasn't just a personality disorder. It was the perfect temperament for a criminal. If he's under investigation, he may know, or suspect. Men like him have antennae for trouble. Marcus leaned in closer. Jet, listen to me. This changes everything. A man embroiled in this level of financial crime, who has systematically broken his wife's will over a decade, is not a safe man if he feels the walls closing in. His family aren't just his dependents. They're assets, or liabilities, or leverage. What are you saying? I'm saying that in his calculus, if he needs to run, he might see them as a necessary shield, or as loose ends that could be used against him. Taking them to a non-extradition country under the guise of a family vacation is a classic move. Or, if he thinks they're a threat, he let the sentence hang. Your friend isn't just in a psychologically abusive marriage. She and her children are in potential physical danger from a man who views the world, and everyone in it, as variables in a risk assessment matrix. The world seemed to tilt. I'd been focused on the prison of rules, the emotional violence. I hadn't let myself consider raw, physical peril, but Marcus was right. Daniel was a man who saw people as projects, as creations. What did a creator do with a flawed or threatening creation? I have to get her out, I said, the words tasting like iron. Now, slow down, Marcus said, his voice the calm in the storm I felt brewing. You charging in like a cavalry officer will get someone hurt. Likely Evelyn or the kids. He has all the power there. You need a plan. A smart, careful, legal plan. Tell me, first, she needs to start gathering evidence herself. Audio recordings on her phone. If it's safe, a journal, hidden, documentation of the financial control, statements, his allowances, anything that shows the pattern. Second, she needs a safe, separate bank account, a little money he doesn't know about. I can help set up a digital one. Third, and most importantly, she needs to connect with a local support system now, before she makes a move. A lawyer who knows family law and coercive control. A women's shelter that understands the dynamics. So if the roof blows off, she has a place to run to and people who know what to do. She's terrified. He's convinced her she's incapable of anything. Then you have to help her see she can do it. One small step. Getting her to a lawyer for a hypothetical consultation would be a huge win. My friend Clara in Berlin. She's the best. She can make Evelyn see her rights, her options. Knowledge is power. Right now, he owns all the knowledge. We spent the next 2 hours hammering out the skeleton of a plan. Marcus drafted a list of steps, coded in vague language. He gave me Clara's secure contact details. He explained the basics of German family law, the concept of Gewaltschutzgesetz, Protection Against Violence Act, and how to file for a protective order. He talked about Frauenhäuser.women's shelters. And their strict confidentiality protocols. The most dangerous time for a woman in her situation, Marcus said, as we walked back towards the station, is when she's planning to leave or has just left. That's when the controller feels the loss of control most acutely. That's when things can turn violent. You cannot underestimate him. I don't, I said, my mind already back in that sterile loft. Seeing Daniel's cold, assessing eyes. He's the most dangerous man I've ever met because he doesn't think he's a villain. He thinks he's a goddamn philosopher king. Marcus stopped, turning to face me. He put his hands on my shoulders. Jet, listen, you're brave and loyal. It's why He stopped, changing tack. It's why I'm telling you to be careful. This isn't a cliff you can just free solo. This is a complex, dangerous extraction. You're not just her friend right now. You're her lifeline. Don't do anything stupid. Use me. Use Clara. Every step of the way. I looked into his worried face. So different from the charming, flirtatious man I'd known. This was the real Marcus, the one who fought for people in courtrooms. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than I had for anything in a long time. For believing me. For this. Just get her to Clara. He said, one step. That's the mission. On the train back to Berlin, the picturesque Bavarian landscape was a smear of green and gray. I didn't see it. I saw Evelyn's frightened eyes. I saw Leo's tiny hands cleaning up spilled milk. I saw Noah's weary soldier gaze. And I saw Marcus's grim face when he said the words. Assets. Liabilities. Leverage. Daniel Bauer wasn't just a captor. He was a criminal. And my best friend and her children were living in his fortified vault. I had to find the combination. And I had to do it before he decided to move his assets to a more secure location, or liquidate them. The art sponsorship mixer was a fiction. My real mission had just begun. The return to Berlin felt like resubmerging into a deep, silent pool. The air in the loft was different, charged with a tension that hadn't been there before, or perhaps I was just now attuned to its frequency. Evelyn greeted me with a tight hug, her eyes searching mine for something, a verdict, a promise. I wasn't sure. How was Munich? Productive? She asked, the question laced with a hidden meaning only I could hear. Very, I said, squeezing her hand slightly. Met some fascinating people. Got some new perspectives. I glanced around. The children were in there after school. Quiet study period. Daniel was still at work. Where is everyone? Protocol adherence. Evelyn said automatically, then caught herself. a flicker of something like shame crossing her face. She was speaking his language without thinking. I mean, they're doing homework. Can I get you some tea? Actually, I said, slinging my camera bag onto the sleek sofa. I want to show you something. From my trip. A preview of a new project. I led her to the guest room, the only semi-private space. Opening my laptop, I pulled up not the alpine landscapes I'd pretended to shoot, but a carefully curated folder. I've been thinking. I began. My voice casual. My editor wants more narrative. More human faces. I've been collecting stories. Stories of women. Not the glossy magazine kind. The real kind. I clicked on the first image. It was a photo I'd taken in Rajasthan 2 years ago. A woman in a vibrant sari, her face lined with sun and laughter, stood proudly before a small, whitewashed schoolhouse. This is Mira. She was married at 16, widowed at 22. Her in-laws threw her out. She used her skill at embroidery, started with one sewing machine under a tree. Now she runs a cooperative that employs over 30 other widowed or abandoned women. She fought the village council for 2 years to get the land for the school. Evelyn leaned in, studying the woman's face. She looks unbreakable. She's been broken plenty. I said softly. She just decided to put herself back together, differently. I swiped to the next photo. A stark black and white portrait of a woman with close-cropped hair and fierce eyes, standing in an auto repair garage in Detroit. Latasha, her husband, the family mechanic, told her for a decade she was too stupid to even check the oil. After he left, she was dead broke with 2 kids, enrolled in vocational school, top of her class. Now she owns that garage. Says her ex's voice in her head is just background noise now. Like a bad radio station, she's learned to tune out. Evelyn's breath hitched. I continued, image after image. A Syrian refugee who'd turned her knowledge of traditional fabrics into a booming online business in Istanbul. Icelandic fisherman's wife who'd taken over the family boat after he fell ill and now captained it herself, battling the North Atlantic swells. They all have scars, Evie, I said, closing the laptop. They all heard voices, that husbands, fathers, societies that telling them they couldn't. They shouldn't. They weren't enough. The difference is they stopped listening to those voices and started listening to their own. Evelyn was silent for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of my laptop. They're so strong. I was never that strong. Bullshit. The word came out sharper than I intended. I softened my tone. Do you remember junior year? When Mr. Hendricks said your feminist critique of The Great Gatsby was hysterical, and you wouldn't get an A unless you rewrote it with a more balanced perspective? A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I told him to grade the paper I wrote, not the one he wished I'd written. And you got the A, because your argument was airtight. You stood your ground. You were 17. Evelyn, that's strength. Or how about when you organized the food bank drive and the principal said it was too political? You got the local news involved. You changed the policy. I reached into my bag, pulling out my phone. I digitized some old photos. I pulled one up. Us at graduation. Evelyn in her cap and gown, holding her diploma high, head thrown back, laughing with pure, unadulterated joy. Her eyes sparkled with a future she owned. That girl, that's you. She's not gone. She's just buried under a lot of someone else's rules. Tears welled in her eyes. That feels like a different person. From another lifetime. She's in there. I see her. Every time you flinch before Daniel speaks. She's fighting to get out. The moment was shattered by the sound of the key in the lock. Evelyn's whole body snapped to attention. The vulnerable woman vanishing, replaced by the poised, alert wife. She hastily wiped her eyes. Thank you for showing me, she said, her voice formal again. They're very inspiring stories. Dinner that night was the usual quiet affair. Daniel held forth on the inefficiencies of the German tax code. Then, as he cut into his roast chicken, he said, Evelyn, I reviewed the household expenditure logs. The organic berry allocation for the children's smoothies is 20% over budget this month. Explain the variance. Evelyn's fork paused. The prices at Biomarket went up. I noted it on the noted. Yes, but not mitigated. His tone was calm, analytical. A competent manager anticipates market fluctuations. You could have substituted with a frozen, in-season alternative from the discount retailer without a measurable nutrient loss. It's a failure of proactive planning. I saw it at the slight slump of her shoulders, the internalization of the failure. The old Evelyn would have argued, would have cited the superior taste and quality, would have made a case. This Evelyn just nodded. You're right. I'll adjust next month. Before I could think, the words were out of my mouth. Actually, Daniel, I was with her at Biomarket last week. The frozen berries were sold out. Completely. A supply chain issue. It was on the news. And the discount store's brand had added sucrose. Evelyn made the only choice that aligned with the nutritional protocols. I smiled, taking a sip of water. Seems like proactive management to me. The silence that followed was absolute. The children froze. Evelyn stared at her plate, not breathing. Daniel slowly turned his head to look at me. His expression wasn't angry, it was one of cold, intellectual recalibration, as if a lab instrument had given an unexpected reading. Is that so? He said, his voice devoid of inflection. My apologies, Evelyn. I was not in possession of that data point. His eyes, however, remained on me. The message was clear. Stay in your lane. It's fine, Evelyn whispered. Later, as I was helping clear against Daniel's unspoken but palpable preference for his system's order. Evelyn brushed past me at the sink. Thank you, she murmured, so low I almost missed it. It wasn't just for the dishes. 2 days later, Daniel announced an unavoidable 2-night business trip to Zurich. Client exigencies, he said, his suitcase already waiting by the door, packed by Evelyn to a precise checklist. The household protocols will, of course, remain in effect. I will expect the nightly reports as usual. Evelyn, of course. Daniel, she said, handing him his briefcase. The moment the door clicked shut, the very atmosphere in the loft seemed to change. It was subtle that a slight exhale from Evelyn's shoulders, a less rigid set to Noah's back as he watched cartoons, educational, approved ones on the sofa. That evening, I staged my rebellion. Okay, team, I announced, clapping my hands. New, temporary protocol, movie night, with pizza, the kind that comes in a box, with pepperoni, for small faces turned to me, then to their mother, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and longing. Jet, I don't think, Evelyn started, wringing her hands. The nutritional guidelines are for optimal growth and development. I finished, and 1 night of pepperoni pizza and a movie is optimal for joy, which is also essential for development. My professional opinion as a joy consultant. I grinned at the kids. Who's in? Leo was the first to crack, a tiny, hopeful smile playing on his lips. Pizza? He whispered, as if saying a forbidden word. Mia looked at her mother. We have achieved a 94% weekly compliance score, she said, her voice small. Could it be considered a privilege? Evelyn looked from their hopeful faces to me. I saw the war in her eyes. A decade of conditioning versus a spark of the girl who used to eat cold pizza for breakfast after a sleepover. The spark caught. Okay, she said, the words sounding foreign and wonderful. 1 night, but we clean up completely after. And we don't tell Daddy about the pepperoni. It can be our secret. The resulting cheer was the first truly unrestrained sound I'd heard in that apartment. I ordered an obscene amount of pizza. We spread blankets on the living room floor, a blatant violation of the no food outside the dining area rule. We watched The Goonies, a movie full of chaos, disobedience, and kids outsmarting the adults. The children laughed.real. Belly laughs.at sloth. They jumped at the booby traps. They chanted, "Hey, you guys," with the gang. Evelyn, at first, sat stiffly on the edge of an armchair, poised for disaster. But slowly, as the pizza grease and the sheer anarchy of the film worked their magic, she sank into the cushions. She laughed when Chunk did the truffle shuffle. She didn't flinch when popcorn spilled. She even ate 2 slices of pepperoni pizza, a rebellious, guilty pleasure shining in her eyes. For 2 hours, the loft wasn't a monument to control. It was a messy, noisy, happy home. Noah looked like a 10-year-old, not a miniature executive. Mia giggled uncontrollably. Leo used a breadstick as a sword. Finn fell asleep in a pool of cheese-stained contentment. When the movie ended and the credits rolled, a comfortable silence fell, broken only by the soft sound of the television. The children, exhausted and happy, began to drift off to sleep on the blankets. I started quietly gathering plates. Evelyn stood up. "Leave it," she said softly, a quiet command. I looked at her. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear in the dim light of the television. "Okay, I'll get them to bed," she said, and she gently shook the children awake. There was no barked orders, no protocol recitation, just a soft, "Come on, my little pirates, time for bed." They grumbled, sleepily, but obeyed, trailing after her with drowsy smiles. 20 minutes later, she came into the guest room. I was in bed, reading. She stood in the doorway, wearing her robe, looking young and lost. "He's going to know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Know what? That his children had fun? That his wife laughed?" I put my book down. "Let him." She shook her head, stepping in and closing the door softly behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It's not that simple. The system, it's for a reason. It keeps everything safe. Predictable. Safe from what? Evie? Happiness? A mess? A spilled glass of milk?" She flinched at the reference. The tears started then, silent and relentless. I screamed at him. "Jet, my baby." I saw the fear in his eyes. My fear. But I put it there. "I'm the monster. You're not the monster," I said, my voice fierce. "You're in the monster's cage. And you're terrified it's going to bite your children. So you're trying to teach them to be still, to be quiet, so it doesn't notice them. But the monster is the cage. Evie, Daniel, his rules, his system. It's not keeping you safe. It's keeping you trapped. I don't know who I am without it." She sobbed. The confession ripped from her. "For 10 years, every thought, every choice, every minute of my day, it's all been about what he wants, what he expects, what he'll approve. I don't know what I like anymore. I don't know what I think. If I'm not his wife, the mother of his children, what am I? He's right. I'm nothing without him." I moved to sit beside her, pulling her into a fierce hug. She felt fragile, a bird with hollow bones. "That is the biggest lie he ever told you. You were someone before him, a brilliant, funny, passionate, infuriating, wonderful someone. He didn't build you. He walled you up. He took that vibrant, messy, amazing girl and he buried her under a mountain of rules and criticism because her light was too bright for him. It threatened his control, so he had to dim it. He's been dimming it for 10 years. She cried into my shoulder, deep, racking sobs that seemed to come from a place of ancient grief. "I'm so tired. Jet, I'm so tired." "I know," I whispered, stroking her hair. "I know, but listen to me. You don't have to be tired alone anymore. And you don't have to be nothing. The girl you were is still in there. I saw her tonight, laughing at a stupid pirate with her kids. She's fighting to get out. Let me help her." She pulled back, her face ravaged by tears, but her eyes, for the first time, held a flicker of something other than fear or defeat. It was a desperate, fragile hope. "How? He controls everything. The money, the house, the kids, he'd take them from me. He'd tell everyone I'm crazy, unstable. He'd make them believe it. Everyone believes him. He's so convincing. I have a friend, I said carefully, a lawyer, in Berlin. She's helped women in situations like yours. She can explain your rights, what the law really says, not what Daniel says it says. Evelyn shook her head, a frantic, bird-like motion. I can't. He'd know. He checks my phone, the computer logs, the credit card statements. He tracks my location. We'll be careful. We'll be smart. We'll use my phone. We'll tell him it's for my project. An interview with a German female lawyer about work-life balance for a piece I'm doing. It's just information, knowledge. You don't have to do anything with it. Just listen. Know what your options are. Can you do that? Just listen? She was trembling, looking at me as if I were asking her to walk a tightrope over a canyon. The part of her that had calculated grocery budgets to the cent, that followed a minute-by-minute schedule, that knew every rule and consequence, that part was terrified. But the part that had laughed tonight, the part that had once argued with a college dean, that part was looking at the tightrope. And for the first time in a long time, wasn't just seeing the fall. She was seeing the other side. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Then she gave the smallest, most courageous nod I had ever seen. Okay, she whispered. Just listen. Daniel returned from Zurich 2 days later, bringing with him a renewed sense of glacial order. The faint, lingering warmth of the pizza night evaporated instantly, replaced by a silent, comprehensive audit. He checked the children's work, the pantry inventory, the household logs. Evelyn moved through the apartment like a ghost, her brief moment of defiance buried under a fresh layer of anxiety. But I saw the difference now. It wasn't just fear in her eyes. It was calculation. She was observing him back, watching for the cracks in his armor, the data points she'd missed before. The spark we'd fanned was now a pilot light, small but stubborn. The next morning, I enacted Phase 1. Over breakfast, I announced my next project-based outing. I'm doing a series on professional women in Europe, I said, scrolling through my phone as if looking at notes, balancing high-powered careers with family. I've lined up an interview with a lawyer here in Berlin, a real powerhouse, specializes in corporate compliance. I think I used Marcus's suggested terminology, vague enough to bore Daniel, but specific enough to sound legitimate. Thought I'd get a German perspective, maybe even snag a portrait for the piece. Daniel glanced up from his tablet. A reasonable use of your time. The German legal framework, while overregulated, has a certain brutal logic. Evelyn could benefit from exposure to that kind of structured, professional mindset. He said it as if prescribing a vitamin. Evelyn kept her eyes on her coffee cup. It sounds interesting. You should come with me, Evie, I said, as if the idea had just occurred to me. Be my cultural translator. Help me ask the right questions about the family aspect. Besides, you could use a break from the domestic front lines. I aimed a grin at Daniel. If the commander approves a short leave. That is, he considered it, his gaze shifting between us. I held my breath. The risk was that he'd see it as a threat, an outside influence. The opportunity, from his perspective, was that Evelyn would see a structured professional and perhaps feel even more inadequate in comparison, driving her further into his system. His vanity won. A brief excursion is acceptable, he pronounced, but be back by 3. Mia has her piano evaluation at 3:30, and your presence is required to model composure. Of course, Evelyn said, her voice neutral. An hour later, we were on a train headed to a quiet, affluent neighborhood in Charlottenburg, far from Daniel's usual circles. Evelyn was wound so tight I thought she might snap. She jumped at every sound, checked her phone's location-sharing icon every 30 seconds. He can see I'm not in Kreuzberg, she whispered, panic rising in her throat. We're going to a lawyer's office in Charlottenburg. That's exactly what we told him. It's the truth, just not the whole truth. I put a hand on her arm. Breathe, Evie. This is just listening. No one is making you do anything. Clara Schmidt's office was nothing like Daniel's cold, imposing study. It was warm, filled with books and green plants. A small, worn toy box in the corner for clients' children. Clara herself was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. She greeted us in fluent, lightly accented English. Jet, a pleasure. And you must be Evelyn. Please, sit. Can I offer you tea? Something stronger? Her demeanor was that of a trusted doctor, not adversary. Evelyn sat on the edge of a plush armchair, her posture perfect, as if awaiting inspection. Tea is fine. Thank you. Once we had our cups, Clara leaned forward, her hands folded on her desk. Jet has given me a hypothetical overview. Why don't you tell me, in your own words, what a typical day looks like for you? Evelyn began, haltingly, describing the schedule, the children's routines. She used the official terms: protocols, personal refinement plan, efficiency ratings. Clara listened, nodding, making the occasional note. She didn't look shocked. She looked focused. And who manages the family finances? Clara asked gently. My husband. He provides an allowance for groceries, household, the children's needs. I submit receipts and a weekly budget report. Do you have access to the main bank accounts? Investment statements? No, that's his domain. He's the provider. I see. And if you wanted to, say, buy a coat for yourself, or take a friend to lunch. How does that work? Evelyn's cheeks flushed. I'd request the funds, justify the expense, if it aligns with the monthly allocation and is deemed reasonable by your husband. Yes. Clara nodded again. And your social life? Friends? Family back in the States? My primary social function is supporting my husband's professional network. My family, it's difficult with the distance. And the children's schedule is very full. The isolation, laid bare, sounded even more desolate in this sunny room. For an hour, Clara asked questions about how disagreements were resolved, about Daniel's reaction to mistakes, about the children's schooling and medical decisions. Evelyn's answers painted a picture of absolute, micromanaged control. When she mentioned the point system and the weekly reviews, Clara's pen stilled for a moment. Evelyn, Clara said finally, her voice soft but firm. What you are describing is not a traditional marriage. It is a relationship characterized by coercive control. It is a form of domestic abuse. It is not about isolated incidents of violence, but a sustained pattern of domination that strips a person of their autonomy, their self-esteem, and their liberty. The rules, the monitoring, the financial control, the isolation, the constant criticism, these are the tools. Evelyn flinched, as if struck. Abuse? No, he's never. He doesn't hit me. He's building a better me, a better family. It's discipline. It's for us. That is what he has told you. That is the narrative of the controller. Your pain, your exhaustion, your fear, these are not signs of your failure. They are the entirely predictable results of living under this kind of psychological siege. Clara's eyes were full of compassion, but her words were uncompromising. Your mind, your spirit, are reacting exactly as they should to an untenable situation. You are not broken. The situation is. I saw Evelyn grapple with it. The word abuse was a key that didn't fit the lock Daniel had installed. But Clara was offering her a new lock, a new way of understanding the prison. What can I do? The question was a mere breath. First, understand you have rights. German law recognizes psychisch Gewalt, that psychological violence. The patterns you've described can form the basis for a protective order, which can remove him from the home. In a divorce proceeding, this behavior is highly relevant to custody. The court's primary concern is the Kindeswohl, the child's best interest. A home environment of fear, control, and emotional manipulation is not in their best interest. Your role as the primary caregiver, even if he has systematically undermined your confidence, carries significant weight. He'd take them, Evelyn said, terror in her voice. He'd say, I'm unstable. He has money, connections. He can try, but we have strategies. We build a case. We document. We get you and the children support. There are shelters, Frauenhäuser, completely confidential. You could go there tonight if you felt in danger. A shelter? The word seemed to horrify her. A final admission of failure. A place of safety. Clara corrected gently. A bridge. The goal is not the shelter. The goal is your own autonomous life. With your children, the law can be a tool to get you there. She slid a card across the desk. My number. A prepaid, untraceable phone. If you decide to act, you call me. We move at your pace. But knowledge is power. Now you know what this is. And you know it has a name. The train ride back was silent. Evelyn stared out the window. Clara's card burning a hole in her purse. She wasn't crying. She seemed frozen. That night, after Daniel had conducted the children's review, they'd scored a 96%, earning a satisfactory rating. He retired to his study. I was in the guest room when a soft knock came. Evelyn entered, holding a small, leather-bound notebook I hadn't seen before. I've been keeping this, she whispered, for years. Not like this. Just lists, grocery lists, meal plans, schedules. But on the back pages, she opened it, in tiny, cramped handwriting, in margins and upside down, were fragments. He said the soup was bland. My fault. Forgot to toast the cumin seeds. Noah looked at me with such disappointment when I couldn't help with his math. I'm so stupid. Mia asked why I'm always so quiet. What do I even have to say? The dream again. The door is locked from the outside. It was a chronicle of 1,000 tiny deaths. It's evidence, I said, my heart aching. I want to do what Clara said. Document. But how? He checks everything. We'll be smart. I pulled out the cheap, prepaid phone Marcus had mailed to a post office box for me. This is yours. No internet. Just calls and texts. To me. To Clara. Keep it hidden. Charged. And the notebook. Keep writing. But write the facts too. What he says. What he does. Dates. Times. Like a log. She took the phone as if it were a live grenade. What about recording him? Clara mentioned that. If it's safe. If you can start the voice memo on your regular phone and just leave it in your pocket during a discussion. But safety first. Evie. Always. She nodded. A soldier receiving orders. The spark was now a determined flame. Frightened, but burning. The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Noah. Daniel was working late again. I found the boy in his room, not reading physics, but staring at a world map on his wall. Hey, I said, leaning in the doorway. Planning your escape? He turned, a faint smile touching his lips. Sometimes. Dad talks about moving sometimes. For his work. A chill went down my spine. Oh yeah, where to? He was asking me and Mom about schools in Switzerland last week. In Montreux. He said the system there is even more rigorous. But Noah frowned. It was weird. He was looking at flights. And it was only one way. And he got a phone call and got really quiet and said it was just contingency planning. He does that a lot now. Contingency planning. Noah imitated his father's low, serious tone perfectly. One-way tickets. Contingency planning. Marcus's warning screamed in my head. I forced my voice to stay casual. Well, Montreux is beautiful, but Berlin's pretty cool too. I don't want to go, Noah said quietly, with a conviction that surprised me. My friends are here, and Mom's finally starting to seem a little less sad. Since you came. Later, I called Marcus from my own secure line. away from the apartment. I told him about Noah's comment. Marcus was silent for a long moment. It's worse than I thought. He finally said, his voice grim. My contact says the net around Chronosis tightening. An informal inquiry from the BKA. Bauer will know. He'll have protocols for this too. Escape protocols. A family is excellent cover for a sudden relocation to a non-extradition country. Switzerland is tricky, but with the right connections and enough money, moved offshore first. We're out of time, aren't we? I whispered. You need to accelerate the plan. Evelyn needs to start gathering concrete evidence of the abuse. And you need to be ready to move. The shelter, the lawyer, everything. If he announces a family vacation, that might be the point of no return. He could take them and disappear. The next day, I watched Evelyn with new eyes. She moved through her tasks, but I saw the subtle shifts. She left her regular phone on the counter, recording, while Daniel gave her the next day's directives. She began taking photos of the chore wheel, the schedules, with her secret phone. She wrote in her notebook with a new purpose. May 12th, 9:15 p.m. Daniel stated my proposed menu for the week showed a lazy reliance on carbohydrates and demonstrated a willful disregard for the family's metabolic health. He revised it entirely. I am not permitted to deviate. It was a start, but it was a race against a clock we couldn't see, set by a man who viewed his own family as a variable in a criminal equation. The plan was no longer a theoretical map. It was a countdown, and the fuse was lit. The tension in the loft had become a living thing. A fifth child born of silence and sidelong glances. Daniel was home more, his business trips seemingly on hold. He spent long hours in his study with the door locked. The low murmur of tense phone conversations just audible through the thick wood. He reviewed the family protocols with a new, feverish intensity, correcting the children with a sharpness that bordered on rage when Mia's piano timing was a fraction off, or when Leo's shoelace knot was not perfectly symmetrical. He was a spider feeling the first vibrations of a threat on the edge of his web. Evelyn, armed with her secret phone and her coded notebook, had become a study in quiet, desperate courage. The fear was still there, a constant tremor in her hands, but it was now channeled into a focused purpose. She recorded his critiques, his pronouncements, the way he'd snap, because I said so. When a child dared ask why, she documented the empty shelves in the fridge. He began to restrict grocery funds further, citing market volatility. She was building a case, brick by terrified brick. I was the liaison, the outside connector. I communicated with Marcus via encrypted apps, sending him summaries. He, in turn, was working with Clara to prepare the legal groundwork. A place was being readied at a Frauenhaus. The plan was taking shape, but it was a slow, meticulous process. We were sappers, trying to defuse a bomb with a trembling manual. The bomb decided to detonate on its own schedule. It was a Thursday evening. Dinner was a silent, strained affair of reheated leftovers. Daniel had been pacing the apartment all afternoon, his phone glued to his ear. He finally sat at the head of the table, but he wasn't eating. He was watching us, his eyes calculating. He cleared his throat. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Change of plans, he announced, his voice crisp, devoid of its usual pseudo-intellectual cadence. This was pure operational command. We're taking a family holiday, a spontaneous retreat, to Switzerland. The air, the discipline of the mountains that IT will be good for us. A reset. Evelyn's fork clattered against her plate. The children looked up, confused. Family holidays were planned 6 months in advance, with itineraries and packing lists. Spontaneity was a dirty word. Switzerland? Evelyn's voice was thin. When? Tomorrow morning. Early. I've chartered a flight from Tegel. Pack light. Essentials only. 1 bag each. Outdoor wear. We'll be gone for a while. His gaze swept over the children, then landed on me. Your visit. Jet has been illuminating, but I'm afraid it's time to conclude. We'll drop you at a hotel on our way to the airport. Chartered flight. Tomorrow. Essentials only. Gone for a while. Every alarm bell Marcus had installed in my head was shrieking. This was the emergency extraction. The contingency plan. He was running, and he was taking his human shields with him. Evelyn looked at me, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated panic. Do something that they screamed. My mind raced. A whirlwind of adrenaline and fear. I couldn't let them get on that plane. Once he had them in Switzerland, in some secluded chalet, they'd vanish into a maze of offshore accounts and anonymous identities. I had to create a barrier, a reason for Evelyn and the children to stay, right now, that he couldn't immediately override. I bent over suddenly, clutching my stomach. A low groan escaped my lips, perfectly pitched to convey sudden, debilitating illness. Jet? Evelyn was on her feet, her maternal instinct overriding her terror for a second. I don't feel well, I gasped, letting my voice waver. So sick, all of a sudden. I stumbled from my chair, making a beeline for the guest bathroom. I made sure the sounds of violent retching were audible through the door. I flushed the toilet multiple times, splashed water on my face, and emerged pale and sweating, leaning heavily against the doorframe. I'd once had to fake a severe altitude sickness episode to get out of a hostile village in the Andes. This was just another performance. Daniel was staring at me, his expression a mask of icy irritation. This is inconvenient, I think. I think it was the chicken, I moaned, sinking onto the arm of the sofa. It tasted off. Didn't it taste off to you, Evie? Evelyn, catching on with a speed that would have made her old debate coach proud, put a hand to her own stomach. Now that you mention it, I do feel a bit queasy. Children? Any tummy aches? The children, attuned to the unspoken currents of survival in the household, played along. Leo, the best natural actor of the bunch, whimpered, "My tummy hurts, Mama." Daniel's eyes narrowed to slits. He looked from my convincingly clammy face to Evelyn's feigned concern to Leo's pout. He didn't believe it, not for a second, but he couldn't prove it was a ruse. And the idea of a family-wide food poisoning incident on the eve of his meticulously planned escape was a catastrophic variable. This is absurd. He hissed, the controlled facade cracking. We have a schedule, a plane to catch. Daniel, we can't travel with the children if they're ill, Evelyn said, her voice gaining a shred of steel. It was the mother knows best card. One he'd ostensibly given her jurisdiction over. What if it's norovirus? On a chartered plane? It would be a disaster. We'd be stranded. We should wait a day. See how they are. We are leaving tomorrow, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. He took a step toward her. You will pack. Now, this was the moment. The line in the sand. I saw Evelyn glance at the children. Saw Noah's protective step closer to his mother. Saw the fear in Mia's eyes. I saw the decade of obedience war with the newly awakened instinct to fight for her young. Evelyn Bauer straightened her spine. It was a small movement, but in that sterile room, it was revolutionary. She looked her husband in the eye, and though her voice trembled, the words were clear. No, the word hung in the air, simple, absolute, and utterly foreign. Daniel recoiled as if she'd struck him. The children were statues. What did you say? The question was barely a whisper, laden with lethal promise. I said no, Evelyn repeated, her hands clenched at her sides. I will not drag my sick children onto an airplane. I will not risk their health for a schedule. My friend is ill, and I will not abandon her. It's wrong. It's inhumane. We are not leaving tomorrow. The mask of the rational philosopher king shattered completely. What was left was raw, unfiltered menace, his face contorted. You listen to me. You pathetic, hysterical little woman. After everything I've built for you, after everything I've done to shape you into something resembling a competent human being, You will do as you are told. You will get those children, and you will get in the car tomorrow morning. Or so help me God. Or what, Daniel? I pushed myself off the sofa, stepping between him and Evelyn. The pretense of sickness was gone. My voice was calm, flat. The voice I used when facing down an aggressive wolf or a corrupt border official. What will you do? You can't physically force all 4 children and your wife onto a plane without causing a scene. And you hate scenes. They're messy, illogical. He turned his fury on me. This is your doing. You with your cameras and your questions and your subversive little stories. You've poisoned her mind. I opened a window. Daniel, the poison was already in the air. It's the system you built. The one that's starting to attract some very unwelcome attention from outside. Isn't it? Kronos Consulting. Interesting choice of name. The Titan who devoured his own children to maintain his power. His eyes went wide for a fraction of a second. Shock. Then dawning. Horrified understanding. I'd hit the mark. He knew I knew. The transformation was instant. The blustering anger vanished, replaced by a chilling, predatory calm. The real Daniel, the one who navigated financial minefields, emerged. Get out, he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. Get out of my home, gladly. But Evelyn and the children stay. They're not part of your contingency plan. They're not assets to be moved offshore. They're people. This is a family matter. You have no standing here. I'm her friend, and I'm a witness to everything, the protocols, the point system, the way you talk to her, the way you've systematically broken her down for 10 years. I have notes, Daniel, photos, recordings, and I have friends too, lawyers, journalists, people at the American Embassy who would be very interested to know that an American citizen and her 4 American children are being coerced into fleeing the country by a husband who may be trying to evade financial investigators. The silence that followed was profound. I could see the calculations flickering behind his eyes. Risk assessment. I had just introduced multiple unpredictable variables. Legal exposure, diplomatic noise, scandal. For a man whose life was built on control and secrecy, it was a nightmare scenario. You're bluffing, he said, but the conviction was gone. Try me. Touch her. Try to force those children into a car. See what happens. The first call I make won't be to the police. It'll be to a reporter at Der Spiegel who owes me a favor. The headline writes itself. Kronos Consultant in Coercive Control and Flight Scandal. How will that play with your clients? With the regulators who are already sniffing around? He took a step back, his jaw working. He looked at Evelyn, who was standing tall, tears of fear and defiance streaking her face, with Noah's arm now firmly around her waist. He looked at his children, who were staring at him not with their usual blank obedience, but with a dawning, awful clarity. He'd lost them. In this moment, he saw that the most important system of all, the one of fear-based compliance, had crashed. Fine, he spat, the word tasting like ash. Stay, wallow in your sickness and your sentimentality. You have no idea what you're turning down. The safety, the order. He pointed a trembling finger at Evelyn. You will regret this when you're alone, penniless, and overwhelmed. You will beg for the structure I provided, and I will not be there. He turned on his heel, strode to his study, and slammed the door. The lock clicked. The spell broke. Evelyn's knees buckled. Noah and I caught her, lowering her to the sofa. Mia began to cry silently. Leo climbed into his mother's lap, burying his face in her neck. Finn, sensing the storm had passed, just looked confused. Evelyn was shaking uncontrollably. I've never said no like that. He's going to do nothing tonight. I said, my own heart hammering against my ribs. He's in there recalibrating. The direct approach failed. He'll try something else, more insidious. But we bought time. The most important thing is, You're not getting on that plane tomorrow. She looked at me, her eyes haunted. What do we do now? Jet? Now, I said, pulling out my phone. My fingers already dialing Clara's secure number. Now we stop planning. Now we go. The hours after Daniel locked himself in his study were a strange, suspended limbo. The loft, usually a temple to silent order, thrummed with a new, electric tension. It was the quiet of a forest before a storm. Evelyn sat on the sofa, holding Finn, her body still trembling with the aftershocks of her defiance. Noah and Mia huddled close, wide-eyed. Leo, sensing the shift, was uncharacteristically still. My call to Clara was brief and urgent. The timeline just moved up. He tried to force them onto a plane to Switzerland tomorrow. We stopped it. He's locked in his office. We need to move. Tonight. Clara's voice was all business. Understood. The shelter is ready. Do you feel safe to stay there until morning? Or is the threat imminent? I looked at the closed study door. Inside, Daniel was a coiled spring. He'd been outmaneuvered publicly, in front of his children. That was a wound to his ego and his control that he wouldn't tolerate for long. Imminent, I said. He's recalibrating. He'll come out with a new strategy, and it won't be arguing. Okay, listen carefully. Pack for one night. Just essentials. Documents. Passports, birth certificates, and melding papers if you can get them. At 10:30 p.m., take the U-Bahn to Gesundbrunnen Station. Not the main entrance. The north side taxi stand. A blue Volkswagen minivan will be there. The driver's name is Stefan. He works with the shelter. He'll bring you to me. Do you understand? Yes. I repeated the instructions back to her. Jet, once you leave that apartment, it is critical you do not return. This is the most dangerous phase. He will use every means to re-establish control. Promise me. I promise. I hung up and turned to the small, scared cluster on the sofa. Okay, new plan. We're not waiting. We're leaving tonight. Evelyn's eyes widened. Tonight? But the children, their things. We pack one bag. Essentials. Clothes. A favorite toy or book. We get your documents. Do you know where they are? She nodded. A spark of the efficient organizer flashing through the fear. In the safe in his study. I know the combination. It's Noah's birthday. Backwards. Of course it was. A combination he knew she'd remember. Because it was a data point about his child. But one that reinforced her subservience. She could access it. But only to retrieve things for him. Can you get them? Now. While he's in there. She took a shaky breath. Set Finn down. And stood. She walked to the study door. Her steps silent on the polished concrete. She didn't knock. She turned the handle. Locked. She pressed her ear to the door for a moment. Then turned to me, shaking her head. He's on the phone. Arguing. About liquidity and a failure to extract. The terms, overheard, sent a fresh chill through the room. Forget it. I decided. Passports can be replaced. Your safety can't. We'll use copies. You have the photocopies for school, right? Yes. In the filing cabinet. The household administration drawer. Good. Get them. Kids. I turned to them, kneeling down. Listen up. We're going on a secret mission. A very important one. We have to be super quiet and super brave. Go to your rooms. Put your favorite pajamas. One change of clothes. And the one toy or book you cannot sleep without into your school backpacks. In 5 minutes. Meet back here. Do not make a sound. Can you do that? They looked at their mother, Evelyn, clutching the file folder of photocopied documents to her chest. Gave a firm, decisive nod. It was all the confirmation they needed. They scattered, moving with a purpose I'd only ever seen them use for Daniel's protocols. This time, it was for their own freedom. 20 tense minutes later, we were assembled by the door. A huddle of backpacks and pale faces. It was 10:10 p.m. We had 20 minutes. I peered out the peephole. The hallway was empty. The nightly report. Evelyn whispered, a fresh wave of panic hitting her. I didn't submit it. He'll know something's wrong. Let him know, I said, my hand on the door handle. Ready? She looked at her children, Noah, standing tall beside her, Mia, clutching a well-worn stuffed rabbit, Leo, holding her hand, Finn asleep in her arms, wrapped in a blanket. She looked back at the perfect, cold apartment that had been her cage for a decade. A strange calm settled over her features. Ready, we slipped out into the hall, closing the door softly behind us. The elevator ride down was interminable. Every second, I expected the door to the apartment to fly open, for Daniel to appear. We emerged into the cool Berlin night. The city lights a chaotic, beautiful contrast to the sterile world we'd left. We walked quickly, not running, towards the U-Bahn station 2 blocks away. We were on the platform when Evelyn's personal phone buzzed in her purse. Then again, and again, she pulled it out, her face illuminated by the screen. A cascade of messages from Daniel. Evelyn, this is irrational. Return to the apartment. We will discuss this like adults. The children need stability. You are frightening them. Where are you? Do not do this. You are making a catastrophic error. Evelyn, I am warning you. Come back now. Her hands shook, but she didn't reply. She just held the phone, watching the messages pour in, each one a tug on the invisible leash. Then, a new tone, a call. His name flashed on the screen. The children stared at the buzzing, glowing device as if it were a venomous snake. Give it to me, I said gently. She handed it over, relief and terror warring on her face. I hit the button to answer, putting it on speaker. Daniel, a beat of stunned silence. Where is my wife? His voice was low, controlled, but a fury vibrated beneath the surface. She's safe, and she's not coming back. Put her on the phone. Now, this is between us. There is no you and her anymore. Daniel, there's you, and there's the family you abused. The conversation is over. I saw the U-Bahn trains, lights approaching in the tunnel. Jet, you have no idea what you're interfering in. This is bigger than your childish notions of rescue. There are consequences. For everyone. Is that a threat? I asked, my voice cold. The train whooshed into the station, doors sliding open. It's a statement of fact. You've taken what's mine. There is always a reckoning. The line went dead. We boarded the nearly empty train. Evelyn sank into a seat, pulling the children close. She was crying, silent tears of grief, fear, and a staggering, overwhelming relief. Noah put his arm around her. It's okay, Mom. We're with you. At Gesundbrunnen, we found the blue minivan exactly where Clara said it would be. Stefan, a large, quiet man with gentle eyes, simply nodded and opened the sliding door. No questions. 20 minutes later, we were pulling into the garage of a nondescript apartment building. Clara was waiting inside a secure entryway. She ushered us into a small, plainly furnished but clean apartment at a safe house flat. Not the main shelter. You're safe here, she said, her voice firm and calming. He cannot find you. This address does not exist in any directory. First, we rest. Tomorrow, we begin. The next week was a blur of stark, terrifying, and hopeful realities. Clara helped Evelyn file for an emergency protective order, Gewaltschutzverordnung, based on psychological violence and coercive control. Submitting my documentation, Evelyn's secret notebook, and the recordings she'd made, a family court judge, after reviewing the evidence, granted it, barring Daniel from coming within 300 meters of Evelyn, the children, or their temporary residence. It was a piece of paper, but to Evelyn, it was a shield made of law. Marcus's information about Daniel's activities proved crucial. The day after we fled, news broke that Kronos Consulting was under formal investigation by the BKA, Germany's federal police. Daniel Bauer was named as a person of interest. His world of control and order was collapsing in the most public, chaotic way imaginable. Clara used this in the divorce and custody filings, arguing that his involvement in serious financial crime, combined with the proven pattern of domestic abuse, made him a danger to the children's welfare. Daniel fought back, of course, through expensive lawyers. He painted Evelyn as a fragile, manipulated woman suffering a breakdown, influenced by an outsider. He claimed his system was a benign parenting philosophy, taken out of context, but the evidence was too systematic, too cold, and his own legal troubles undermined his image of the stable, impeccable provider. Through it all, Evelyn found a strength I'm not sure she knew she possessed. She attended every meeting with Clara, her voice growing steadier. She learned to comfort her children through nightmares where Daddy is at the door. She made small, terrifying decisions, choosing a temporary kindergarten for Leo and Finn, enrolling Mia in a new, less competitive music class where the teacher praised expression over precision, letting Noah choose a brightly colored comforter for his bed in their new, small, temporary apartment provided by social services. The day I had to leave, my visa expiring, was the hardest. We were in the bare but sunny living room of their new place. Boxes were still unpacked. A child's drawing was taped to the wall to a lopsided sun. "I don't know how to thank you," Evelyn said, her eyes brimming. "You saved our lives. You saved your own life, Evie," I said, hugging her tightly. "I just handed you the map. You walked out of the maze." She pulled back, holding my shoulders. She looked exhausted, older, but her eyes had a light in them I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. It was a wounded light, but it was hers. I'm still scared, all the time. I hear his voice in my head, criticizing every choice. I doubt myself. What if I'm a terrible mother? What if I can't do this alone? You're not alone. You have Clara. You have a therapist now. You have the kids, who adore you. And you have me, a satellite phone call away from any glacier or desert in the world. I smiled. And Evie, the fact that you're asking those questions, that you're worried about being a good mom, that's how you know you already are. Daniel never doubted himself. That was the problem. She nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. It's just the maze door is open. The rest of the way out is on me now. And you'll make it," I said, believing it completely. I hugged each of the children, making them promise to be brave for their mom and to send me pictures of their new adventures. 3 months later, I was in Ilulissat, Greenland, the endless Arctic night, lit by a phenomenal aurora borealis. The green and violet waves danced across the sky, reflected in the iceberg-choked bay. It was a sight of such savage, indifferent beauty it made human problems seem both tiny and profoundly significant. My satellite phone buzzed with a delayed text. It was Evelyn. A photo loaded slowly. It was of her and the kids, not in a sterile loft, but in a small, colorful living room with mismatched furniture. They were decorating a small, lopsided Christmas tree. Evelyn was laughing, a strand of tinsel in her hair. Noah was trying to put a star on the top. Mia was holding up a handmade ornament. Leo was making a silly face. Finn was trying to eat a pine cone. The message below read, "Daniel pled guilty to financial crimes in a deal. He'll serve time. The divorce is final. Full custody for me. Supervised visits for him only after he completes a behavioral program," his lawyers insisted. We moved into a permanent flat. I got a job, part-time at a little gallery near the museum. The owner says I have a good eye. The kids started therapy. So did I. Some days are so hard, but more and more. There are days like this. We miss you. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, even to myself. I looked from the photo on my screen to the cosmic light show in the sky. Some prisons have physical bars. Others are built word by word, rule by rule, until the walls are so high you forget the sky. My friend had found the door. Then, with trembling hands, she'd walked her children through it, into the terrifying, beautiful, messy wilderness of freedom. She was building a new home, not with protocols, but with love, mistakes, laughter, and tinsel in her hair. I took a picture of the aurora, and below it, I typed my reply. The strongest cages are the ones we can't see. You didn't just escape yours, Evie. You melted it down and turned the key into a suncatcher. Keep shining. Love you, G. I hit send, the signal bouncing off a satellite towards a new home in Berlin. Above me, the silent, dazzling lights of the universe danced on. Indifferent and glorious, girls help girls, always, and sometimes that's enough to change a whole world.